Welcome to Bite Size Bios. This is meant to be a mini-sode that will accompany HDTH. Every week, I will pick a person from history and dive into their lives. All right, welcome back to another episode of Bite Size Bios, BSB. This week we are talking about Condoleeza Rice. She was the first black female Secretary of State to ever have existed within our country, good old America. It was a good episode, I think. I've just, recently just listened to it and gave it an edit, and so now we're gonna put it out to the masses. But before we do that, I hope you guys all head over to hdthappen.com, where all the extras from this week's episode and all other episodes will be. I will definitely post some interviews that I found on this woman. It was very interesting. There's a lot on her. I was able to find a lot of different interviews that really, showcased her point of view, and I didn't realize she had written so many books as well. To really hear her speak, you can. I have compassion. I definitely do. Last week we talked about voodoo. I learned a lot about voodoo. Like I said, I didn't know that it was a religion. I didn't know that it spread to America, had a lot to do with the Haitian slave uprising of 1791. I did not know anything about that. And I'm sure I missed a bunch, and that's why I think I may actually do a voodoo part 2. If you listen to that last episode, I mentioned that I may or may not want to do that. I think there's just so much. It's not coming right now. I still got some other stuff, it's already kind of lined up before we get to that. But I definitely think there may be space for a voodoo part 2. I don't know if there's that much more to mention before we get to the episode. The listenership, is it viewership or downloadership? It's not viewership. I guess downloadership is definitely going up. I appreciate you guys always. I think I posted on Twitter. We were top 16 in history podcasts on Good Pods. It's something, it's not, if like I've been pushing for this podcast to be top 100 history podcasts on Apple Podcasts. We're not there yet, but I mean, look, we're top 20 somewhere, like I said, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. But yeah, without further ado, let's learn about Condoleeza Rice. So Condoleezza Rice was born in Birmingham, Alabama on November the 14th, 1954. She was an only child. Her parents were named Angelina Rice and John Wesley Rice Jr. Her mother was a high school teacher, and her father was a high school Presbyterian minister and also the dean of students at what would come to be a number of colleges as time would go on. But I believe when she was born, he was the dean of students at Stillman College. I'm not sure. Don't at me. Rice began to learn French, music, figure skating, and ballet at the age of 3. Kind of reminds you of Jackie O and her upbringing, where everything was in French. Her name comes from the music term condolcese, which is Italian for with sweetness, that's a pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool to be named with sweetness. In 1967, her family moved to Denver, Colorado, where she attended St. Mary's Academy, which was an all-girls Catholic high school. And at the age of 15, she began piano classes, with the goal of becoming a concert pianist. She was able to graduate at the age of 16 because she skipped the first and 7th grades, respectively. And after that, she enrolled at the University of Denver, which she would spend a lot of time at throughout her academic career. Initially, she majored in music because, like we said, she started taking piano lessons and was trying to become a concert pianist. But she said that when she got to the University of Denver and saw the other more talented students, she realized that it might be time to change her major. I think there's an actual story where she went to some sort of, I think it was an Aspen music festival or something like that. And she saw all these people that were just, more talented than her. I've definitely been there myself. I played college baseball, but when I got to college and I saw the people that were there, and I was just like, oh man, you guys are all better than me. You know what I mean? Like I get it. I didn't think I was that good before, anyways. But so I totally understand. So because she saw that, she kind of changed her ideas of what she wanted to do in college, and she shifted her major to political science after hearing a speech by a man named Joseph Corbel, who was a teacher at the University of Denver. They believe the speech was on Joseph Stalin. But what is interesting about Joseph Corbel is he is the father of Madeleine Albright, who was the first female Secretary of State. And this woman who we're talking about right here, Condoleezza Rice, she will become the second female Secretary of State and the first black female Secretary of State. So it's interesting that what caused her to change her direction in life was the father of someone who was going to make history, and they both made history. It's just, I don't know if you can call that kismet. I mean, I'm not somebody who completely believes in coincidences, but that's a whole different podcast. Let's move on with Miss Condoleezza Rice here. So, of course, like I said, she will go on to become the first black female Secretary of State. We'll move on to her life after undergrad. So after getting her BA at the University of Denver, she went on to get just a slew of degrees. She got a master's from Notre Dame. She studied Russian at Moscow University because her specialty would end up being Russian throughout basically her entire career. And during this time, she interned with the Carter administration. And before going on to get her PhD in political science from the University of Denver, like I said, she would go there multiple times. She also had a fellowship at Stanford University in the field of international security. And this is really where I feel like she shines as an individual, as far as like where her mind is probably best suited. So this fellowship led to her becoming a professor at Stanford. She got promoted to associate professor and then full tenured professor. She's held a number of different jobs over the years. In 1986, she was appointed a special assistant to the director of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to work on nuclear strategic planning. And this is not normal. I mean, not her. I'm just saying, like, when you think about somebody's resume, like, this is not, just run of the mill. She's one of the great minds, I honestly believe, of the 20th century. And maybe we'll see what happens over the next, few years. You can say maybe even say the 21st century, but definitely, like, she was instrumental in a lot of different issues that America has had. Actually, when you actually look back on it, she only recently came into the foreground when she was, the Secretary of State. But it's like, you don't just get to be even be nominated as a black female Secretary of State unless you've gotten the job done in a couple places. That's just basically undeniable. But she's done other things that actually are somewhat funny, or not funny, but if you understand how geopolitics works, or whatever. She headed the committee for public policy for Chevron, and during this time she had an oil tanker named after her. But like I said, her expertise was in Russian, and so Chevron was trying to secure a $10 billion development project in Kazakhstan, so they needed her Soviet specialties to understand what was going on. But what's interesting is the name, once they named that tanker after her, it was discreetly kind of changed later on when she started working for the Bush administration, because they didn't want any actual connections to like the Bushes and big oil. So that's kind of interesting when you think about it. I mean, was there something subversive going on? Who knows? Probably not. But you start making moves like that, it makes, I don't know, people notice. But so we'll move on to the real meat of her political career. And during her career in academia, she always kept one foot in the political arena, from her internship in the Carter administration, as well as her time working with the nuclear strategy, whatever committee she was working with it before. I mean, and that's really interesting because she was working to try to quell the issues that were going on in North Korea before Kim Jong-un, even his father. She was working to try to stop his father from blowing off some crazy nukes. Like, she's been around. And as previously mentioned, her focus is on Russia. And George H.W. Bush was quoted as telling Mikhail Gorbachev that, quote, "She tells me everything I need to know about the Soviet Union." So she's always kind of been in people's ear about Russia, which has always kind of been a thing that Americans have been concerned with going back to, I mean, I'll probably get it wrong, but at least the war, the world wars. There we go. But yeah, she worked on the administration from 89 to 91. Which was very instrumental in global culture, because actually she was around when the Berlin Wall fell. And what she says in an interview, and I don't have a sound bite from it, but it's really interesting. She says the Berlin Wall, I believe she said, fell on 11/9, right, as far as like saying November the 9th. And she was the national security advisor for, the Bush administration on 9/11. So she sees herself as like bridging some sort of gap between these two. Kind of a narrative for the entire kind of world. When you think about it, she is very instrumental in a lot of things that, I don't know, people probably take for granted. But after 91, she went back to teaching at Stanford, and this was how she was able to actually attain tenure, because she couldn't be gone from Stanford for more than 2 years, or she would have lost the ability to actually become a tenured professor. She held a few more high-profile positions. The one that I mentioned also was, like I said, the National Security Advisor. She was the first woman to actually be National Security Advisor. She was pivotal in America's invasion in Iraq and has come under fire in recent years for her role. Because, but that whole thing is not. We can't even. That's not really her. I mean, or not her. Like, I don't know her. I'm saying that's not all her. There was a lot going on during that time. So it's a lot to put it on her shoulders. But yeah, as we stated, she was nominated and confirmed to be the Secretary of State. And she was actually came into office, I believe, in January of 2005. She was confirmed by the most negative votes for a Secretary of State since 1825. Just an interesting note. Life after politics, kind of. So her life post being Secretary of State is somewhat interesting. And while I don't keep up with what she does in most, I don't know what she's doing right now even, but I follow college football. And so in October of 2013, she was selected to be one of the 13 inaugural members of the college football playoff selection committee. It was really interesting, but it shouldn't be that. It doesn't come as a surprise if you actually really know her. Like, I didn't mention earlier, but her father was, I believe he was a high school football coach, or definitely done some coaching of football throughout his life, and instilled the love of football in her. So she really is actually a pretty knowledgeable person when it does come to football. It was just really interesting to see, former Secretary of State come out and have that sort of influence. One last thing before we get out of here. Let me see. Well, maybe two, but yeah. So like, I looked up to see she has let me see how many does she have. She has 14 honorary degrees from different colleges and universities throughout the country, and I think maybe even the world. That would seem like a lot, right? And this has really nothing to do with hers compared to when I looked up how many Bill Cosby has. He has 72. He was given 72 honorary degrees, but 62 of them were actually taken back. And when you look up the colleges that left them, I don't know. Maybe that's just worth a Google for you. I'm going to leave it out there. I'm not going to mention any of those, but I thought that was wild. One more thing, I think, and I haven't actually read this book, but I have this book. It is in Bob Woodward's 2018 book, Fear, semicolon, or is that a colon? I don't really know. Trump in the White House. It was revealed that there had been talks of Trump stepping down during his campaign and having Mike Pence take over as the actual top of the ticket, and then having Condoleezza Rice as his running mate. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because she always, denies she has any real political, future political aspirations or leanings. But I'm proud that, if Bob Woodward said it, it's probably true. So I just thought that was interesting. All right, that's been another episode of Bite Size Bios. We learned a lot about Condoleezza Rice. I personally I'd already read her biography, but I read it like years ago, so I only had bits and pieces to go on. So it's good to kind of go back and learn a little bit about her. I think she's a really extraordinary woman, and that's why I did this, because I feel like that's why I'm trying to include more women. I want to do a lot more women on these BSBs, these bite-sized bios. I definitely do. So if you guys have any people you want to submit, you can definitely do it on the Twitter page, or you can do it on the website. You just drop a comment anywhere you want, and I'll definitely read it. But other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys in a couple days when we do another HDTH. As always, thank you guys for pressing play. See you in a couple days.